Hi everyone and welcome to the Education Business Podcast. This is episode 99, so I am one off 100. So next week's episode is episode 100, obviously, if you can add up as well as I can, and it will be the week that I launch the new version of Education Business Club. So the episode comes out on the Monday and I'm launching on the Wednesday. And I have been on such a journey with that. If you've been with me for a number of years, you'll know that I launched a club before. And really, that was just about figuring out how to serve education business owners at a number of different levels. And this is where I've landed on the new Education Business Club. It has been a real journey, but it's been really exciting. And I feel like I finally got to a place where I've been able to step back and listen to myself instead of listening to everybody else all of the time. So that has been really, really helpful, not only for what I'm going to be able to offer you, but also for myself. I feel like I've developed the skill more of being able to listen to myself, which I know will help you in the club as well, because I'm going to be releasing content in there every single month. So you've got courses at the different levels, but you've also got the content libraries, which means that every month, each content library will have new content in there that you will be able to listen to on demand when it suits you, so that you can find the answers to the questions that you have. And if you've got questions that are not answered yet in the club, then just send me a message on Instagram and I'll do what I can to make sure that that gets covered in the club as well, because the whole point is building this really big library of questions and answers so that when you really need it most, it's there available for you. Because I don't know how many times I've wondered, could I ask my mentor this question? But I'm not really in that kind of relationship with them where I have direct access. Maybe it's a group program or something like that. But if they had had a platform where they could have answered my question for everybody, then I know, thinking about these particular mentors I'm thinking about, they would absolutely have done that, because it would have created value for so many people, which is what we're all in the business of doing. But it got me thinking about listening to myself and listening to others. And one of the hardest things can be to discern who we're listening to and whether or not it's what we need right in this moment. And that seems to be a recurring theme, particularly in my business life, where maybe I'm not listening to the right people, or I'm letting people have too much say, and I'm not listening to myself in those times. I'm just listening to the person. And that can be really, really tricky to do, to work out who we need to listen to in this moment in time. And it's just a skill that we need to keep practicing. And I wanted to let you know I wanted to let you know that I am still practicing that. I am still working on that one. I just also wanted to say thank you to everyone who reached out to me on Instagram after the last podcast episode, where I talked about figuring out where you are in the tiers of Education Business Club. Where is your business right now? That was really, really helpful. Thank you if you reached out. Thank you if you reached out. And one of the messages in particular really got me thinking about the clarity that I have on the club right now. Because to get clear on the club, I had to listen to what I knew based on my experience, not what someone was asking for who hasn't yet lived that experience. Therefore, it's based on what they assume they might need. And this really hit me. I wrote it out and I wrote a reply, and the clarity came to me in that moment that that's what I've done. I've gone away and I've done it based on the experience rather than an assumption. And the reason why it was so profound is that I realized that that is happening to me right now in this moment. So this is a thing that keeps happening in business, and it's happening to me. So the story is this. We are looking at potentially working on a new project at Classroom Secrets. And we're definitely at the stage where we understand the value of bringing the right people in with the right knowledge and experience to make sure that it moves quickly, smoothly, and while obviously that costs, to make sure it's cost effective as well. So what I was tasked with after the board meeting was to go out to particular people in my network and see who we could be connected with. So I went away and I did that. And I got a response back. I got a recommendation to work with a particular individual. And I was really surprised. It was really not what I was expecting. So I hadn't mentioned a specific role type when I asked my network for this particular recommendation, but I thought I'd been quite clear about what I was wanting. But the response I got back, the recommendation, was for a completely different role type than I was expecting. And all of a sudden I started worrying, like, oh my word, is there a bigger sell here? Am I going to be screwed over? And the reason why I'm feeling that is because I've got my history to look back on. I've got my stories to look back on. And I reassured myself, no, it's okay. We have the right people in our network now. We have the right people who have got their eyes on the business to make sure that we can have enough checks and balances moving forward. But what surprised me more than anything, and I thought it was really helpful, was that what I thought we needed is obviously not what we need, because I asked a really experienced person and told them a little bit about what we're wanting to do. And I asked them because they have done it in many companies time and time and time again. And they've recommended to me a role I was not expecting. So there's something that I don't know, but I didn't know that I made an assumption based on what I know so far that probably wasn't the right assumption. And it's easy for us to do that, isn't it? It's easy for us to make an assumption about what we need, but maybe we don't actually know because we've not lived it before. And so I thought that would be a helpful story to share. And so it got me thinking then, how do you combat this not knowing, these assumptions, this not having the experience? And for a moment, I wasn't sure that I'd be able to think of an answer, but it came to me. It's in the stories. So the stories from my own experience. We'll move cautiously into talks with this particular individual based on stories of our own past and our own experiences, but also stories from people who are working with us now, because we've built quite a network around us of people, stories of people that I trust who are experienced, obviously, not my mum. Stories from people who have had this kind of experience. Stories of people from the clubs and networks that I'm part of. When we're in London, we actually share what's going on in our business. And we do that in return for hive mind answers. And that's really helpful because while the companies are very, very different, sometimes the problems are really, really similar. And I could have experienced something that somebody else hasn't, and vice versa. And while I'm in those groups, I'm actually learning a lot about business through stories that I have no idea about. So particularly different types of business that are very different to education. But I know in the future, those stories will support me in making the right decisions going forward based on their experiences, or I might be able to help somebody else. But it's strengthening my knowledge every day by listening to other people's stories and what they've learned from them, but also what I take from the story that they're telling as well, from my lens, based on how I'm viewing it. So I think stories are powerful. Our own stories and other people's stories can help us navigate where we're going next in our businesses. And if you've listened to at least a couple of episodes of the Education Business Podcast, then you'll know that I love teaching through telling stories. I'm always telling some kind of story that happened to me. Education Business Club is going to be no different. Where I've been able to, I've shared real life stories, or if not the real stories, because when you're talking about team, that's not always possible. I have alluded to the real events that have occurred because I know through the mentoring work that we do that the stories I have are the same stories that are currently playing out for you. And they're so similar. In some ways, it's almost like you can't write it. They are so similar. And you know when you're going through a difficult situation and you just feel so much better when you meet someone who's actually come out of the other side of that and they tell you how that happened. It's almost like you can roadmap the steps and you can believe that things are going to get better. Well, that's one of the gifts that I'm trying to bring to you in the New Education Business Club. I'm really trying to create that kind of experience. So what are your main stories that come to mind when you think about your business journey so far? Have you got any really tiny stories that have happened this week? How are you navigating your business journey based on the stories that you've already heard? Are you using a network? Are you listening to mentors where they can tell stories that will help you as you go forward so that you don't make the same mistakes that they did going forward? I want you to really think about stories this week and how you can use them, not just your stories, but other people's stories, to help you move your business forward.